Hello, Namaskar. This is Firstpost and you're watching Vantage with me, Palki Sharma. The big meeting has taken place. Modi and Trump, handshakes, hugs, headlines, also punchlines. MAGA plus MEGA is equal to mega. We'll explain it later on the show. Also look at the big takeaways from the talks. Tariffs, immigration, space, defense, energy, artificial intelligence, terrorism, they've covered all of it. Plus a report on the gifts that the two leaders exchanged and Prime Minister Modi's other engagements with President Trump's team. The US now wants to sell F-35 fighter jets to India. Russia wants to sell us the Su-57. We'll compare the two to see which one is better suited to India's needs. Why has the Indian Air Chief slammed HAL? Why does Trump want Russia back in the G7? Why is Moscow building a naval base in the Sudan? And what is China's planetary defense force? All this and more coming up. The headlines first. Saudi Arabia to host an Arab summit on Donald Trump's Gaza plan. The US president has proposed that Washington takes over the besieged strip and move more than 2 million Palestinians out of the territory. The leaders of Egypt, Jordan, Qatar and the UAE will attend the summit on the 20th of February. Iran accuses Israel of disrupting flights from Tehran to Beirut. 2 Iranian planes were barred from landing in the Lebanese capital. In protest, Hezbollah supporters blocked the Beirut airport road and burned tires. Israel has accused Hezbollah of using Lebanon's only airport to transfer weapons from Iran. India marks the 6th anniversary of the Pulwama terror attack in Jammu and Kashmir. Prime Minister Narendra Modi pays a tribute to the 40 soldiers who lost their lives. This was one of the deadliest attacks on security forces in India. It was carried out by the Pakistan-based terrorist group Jaish-e-Mohammed. M23 rebels and Rwandan troops seize a key airport in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo. The airport serves the capital of the South Kivu province. The anti-government forces are marching towards the provincial capital. The airport was the last military obstacle before it. And the trial of Spain's former football chief, Luis Rubiales, ends. He is accused of sexual assault for kissing a player in 2023 after Spain's victory at the Women's World Cup. Rubiales claims that the kiss was consensual. The verdict is expected to take weeks. The bromance is well and alive. We had questions before yesterday's meeting. Would Prime Minister Narendra Modi and President Donald Trump pick up where they left off? Would they be able to rekindle the magic? The answer, we can tell you, is a resounding yes. President Trump welcomed Prime Minister Modi to the White House yesterday. They exchanged warm handshakes and hugs. Trump also told Modi that he missed him. Listen to this.
Great to see you again.
We missed you. We missed you a lot.
Modi then met Trump's cabinet and his advisors. He also signed the visitor's book. Again, the warmth was on full display. The US president pulled up a chair for Prime Minister Modi. He watched on as the Indian leader signed the book. Afterwards, they headed into the Oval Office, which is where the US president works. Both Modi and Trump briefly interacted with the media. They took questions on bilateral ties, trade and defense. Then came the main event, the talks between the two leaders. They lasted for nearly 4 hours and covered almost all issues. After this, you had the press conference. All in all, a very comprehensive meeting, that too just 3 weeks after Trump's inauguration. So tonight, we're bringing you the top 10 highlights. Number 1, Modi has tapped into the MAGA fever. MAGA stands for Make America Great Again, MAGA. It refers to Trump's political movement and ideology. Now, Modi has tweaked it a bit, and he said his vision is to make India great again, which is MEGA, M-I-G-A. Listen to this.
अमेरिका की भाषा में कहूं
तो विकसित भारत का मतलब मेक इंडिया ग्रेट अगेन, यानी मीगा। जब अमेरिका और भारत साथ मिलकर काम करते हैं, यानी मागा, मागा प्लस मीगा, तब बन जाता है मेगा पार्टनरशिप फॉर प्रॉस्पेरिटी। और यही मेगा स्पिरिट।
Highlight number 2, focus on defense purchases. The US promised to co-produce arms with India. The joint statement also mentions new deals for Javelin anti-tank missiles, for Stryker combat vehicles and AI-enabled drones. Now, these are not simply being bought off the shelf, they are being produced jointly. But the biggest deal was hinted by Donald Trump, the sale of America's F-35 jet to India. Listen to this.
Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters.
Highlight number 3, Mission 500 for trade. Both Modi and Trump have set an ambitious target. They want bilateral trade to reach $500 billion by 2030. Right now, it's $129 billion. They want it to go up to $500 billion in the next 5 years. The first step towards that is to resolve the tariff issue. Trump has called India tariff king. But India is looking to avoid a trade war. So both leaders are eyeing a mini trade deal. They have asked senior officials to start negotiations. The target is to reach a deal by September 2025, and the early signs are good. Trump praised Modi's recent tariff concessions. He also said that Modi is a much tougher negotiator than himself.
Our trading relationship, as a signal of good faith, Prime Minister Modi recently announced the reductions to India's unfair, very strong tariffs that limit U.S. access into the Indian market very strongly. And really, it's a big problem, I must say. All right, go ahead, please, with the tie. With the tie, yeah.
Mr. President, you spoke about Prime Minister Modi as a tough negotiator. Who was a tougher negotiator today and who has a better negotiating tactic when it comes to tariffs?
Oh, he's a much tougher negotiator than me, and he's a much better negotiator than me. There's not even a contest. Okay?
Highlight number 4, combating terrorism. Trump has approved the extradition of a 2611 accused. His name is Tehevur Rana. He has links to Pakistan's Lashkar-e-Toiba. Rana is accused of aiding the Mumbai attacks of 2008, the 2611 attacks. He was fighting his extradition in US courts, but last month, the American Supreme Court rejected his appeal, and after that, it was all up to Donald Trump. And the US president has okayed Rana's extradition. He's also said that more will follow, and Prime Minister Modi thanked President Trump for his decision.
और मैं राष्ट्रपति जी का आभारी हूं, उन्होंने 2008 के जिसने भारत में नरसंहार किया था, उस मुजरिम को अब भारत के हवाले करने का निर्णय किया है। भारत की अदालतें उचित कार्यवाही करेंगी।
The joint statement also called out Pakistan. Both Trump and Modi asked Islamabad to bring 2611 perpetrators to justice. Next is highlight number 5, illegal migration. It's a key issue at home for President Trump, so Modi gave him concessions. He reiterated India's position on the issue. If they're illegal Indians, we will take them back.
जहां तक भारत और अमेरिका का सवाल है, हमने हमेशा कहा है कि जो वेरीफाइड होगा, कि जो सच्चे अर्थ में भारत का ही नागरिक होगा, वो अगर अमेरिका में गैर कानूनी तरीके से रहता है, तो उसको वापस लेने के लिए भारत तैयार है।
Highlight number 6, the India-China border issue. Remember, the Galwan clashes happened in 2020. Back then, Donald Trump was president of America, and he was very keen on mediating between the two countries back then. And it's an offer that he has repeated once again.
I look at India, I do see the skirmishes on the border, which are quite vicious, and I guess they continue to go on. if I could be of help, I'd love to help because that should be stopped. That's been going on for a long time, and it's quite violent. It's quite violent.
Not sure if India will take it up, though, especially after last year's border deal with China. Anyway, highlight number 7, nuclear cooperation. India and the US signed a civil nuclear deal in 2008, a deal that allowed US firms to invest in India's nuclear power infrastructure, also to sell reactors to India. It was signed in 2008. No progress has been made so far. Both Modi and Trump want to change that. They have promised to build US-designed nuclear reactors in India. These are small modular reactors, or SMRs as they're called. Their capacity is 300 megawatts, which is 1/3 of a traditional reactor. Experts say that these small ones are the future of nuclear energy. Highlight number 8, the promise to expand IMEC. IMEC is the India-Middle East Economic Corridor, IMEC. It connects India's west coast to Europe, not via the traditional Suez Canal route, but overland via West Asia. The Gaza war threatened to bury that idea, but both Modi and Trump are keen to push on. They have promised to convene countries that are part of IMEC, like Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Europe. The plan is to host them within 6 months. Next is highlight number 9, and that is Bangladesh. Trump was asked about the situation in Dhaka, especially on reports of the role of America's deep state. The speculation is that the Americans toppled Sheikh Hasina. Trump, though, has denied any American role, and he said he leaves the issue of Bangladesh to Prime Minister Modi.
Well, there was no role for our deep state. It was. This is something that the Prime Minister has been working on for a long time and has been worked on for hundreds of years, frankly. I've been reading about it. But I will leave Bangladesh to the Prime Minister.
And finally, highlight number 10. Trump is coming to India later this year. Modi will be hosting the Quad Summit in 2025. Chances are President Trump will fly down for that. The hope will be to sign a trade deal while Trump is visiting. And who knows, maybe we'll see a repeat of Namaste Trump. And that sums up the top 10 highlights. But frankly, there are many more to list. For example, Modi and Trump unveiled the Trust Initiative. It aims at collaboration on emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and chips. The leaders committed to investments in data centers. They also promised rare earth cooperation, a joint mission to extract minerals like lithium, cobalt, which are key to making batteries. Prime Minister Modi also announced progress on the space front. ISRO and NASA are building a satellite together. And the Indian Prime Minister said it will fly to space soon. That too on an Indian launch vehicle. This is undoubtedly a massive moment in India-US ties because it's not just about the number of initiatives that they've signed, it's also about what they cover, some of the most important sectors of our times: AI, space, chips, rare earths, defense. As always, the key is implementation to make sure that these announcements don't just remain on paper. Before meeting Modi, Trump was up to something else. He was signing a new order. To do what? To impose reciprocal tariffs. President Trump gave a simple explanation for it. If you charge us, we will charge you. Say Brazil imposes a 10% tariff on US cars, then the US will impose a 10% tariff on Brazilian cars. That is the classical definition of reciprocal tariffs. You mirror the tariff imposed on your exports. But Trump is going beyond that, and he is not sparing anyone here. Unlike his previous tariff threats, this one is not targeted. Allies, rivals, enemies, partners, Trump's latest move will affect everyone. But why is he doing it? Apparently to ensure that America gets a fair deal. Listen in.
And they say this is going to be the thing that makes our country really prosperous again. And this is going to be what pays down to $36 trillion in debt and all the other things. And this is going to be, this is an amazing day. I think this is going to be a very big day and in a very positive way for our country. The reciprocal makes tariffs really fair.
So what will be the impact of this move? In the US, it will almost certainly lead to higher inflation. But what about outside the US? It's hard to give a detailed answer now because a lot of calculations are yet to be done. Trump has ordered his team to get cracking. They will now calculate tariff rates for each country. Like I said, it's not just about mirroring rates. Trump wants to go one step ahead. He's accounting for non-tariff barriers as well. For example, subsidies. Say India imposes a 10% tariff on US cars. The Indian government also gives subsidies to domestic car makers. Then Trump is not happy with 10% reciprocal tariffs. He wants to account for the subsidies as well, which means that the US rate could be higher than 10%. So I come back to my question, what will be the impact? In one word, unprecedented. The United States is the largest importer in the world. If they impose such tariffs, the damage will be immense. We're looking at global disruptions. It makes you wonder, why is Trump doing it at all? The US president has given two main reasons. One, to correct trade imbalances. America has run a trade deficit since the 1970s, meaning they import way more than they export. In 2024, their trade deficit was $1.2 trillion. Trump wants to balance his trade. He's giving countries and companies two options, either make in the United States or buy from the United States. The second reason is to pay off America's debt. You just heard him say that. The US national debt is more than $36 trillion. Donald Trump says he will use the tariff revenue to pay it off. Again, the logic is not sound. Tariffs make up just 2% of US revenue. Even if you increase it, you will not make that kind of money. What you will get instead is inflation, and Trump has admitted this. He said prices would rise in the short term.
Oh, I think what's going to go up is jobs are going to go up, and prices could go up somewhat short term, but prices will also go down. And I think the farmers are going to be helped by this very much, because product is being dumped into our country, and our farmers are getting hurt very badly by the last administration.
We'll know for sure by April. That's when the tariffs are expected to be imposed. But for now, let's focus on two questions. One, why are reciprocal tariffs a bad idea? And two, what should countries like India brace for? In an ideal world, there would be no tariffs, or at least the same tariffs. But we don't live in an ideal world. In our world, some countries are more developed and advanced. They have a stronger industrial base, hence their products will be better and cheaper. Imagine these products flooding a developing or underdeveloped market. Their domestic industry would never flourish. Homemade goods would be smothered by imports. Thus, we have different tariff rates. And that was the established trade idea of the last century. But Donald Trump is going against it. He says the world is ripping off America. Which brings us to the second question now. What should we brace for? What should India brace for? Well, Trump specifically called out India. He said India has the highest tariffs anywhere in the world.
But traditionally, India is right at the top of the pack, pretty much. There are a couple of smaller countries that are actually more. But India is a they charge tremendous tariffs.
That was minutes before hosting Prime Minister Modi, and it tells you what we're dealing with here, a calculated business mind. As for the impact, let's look at numbers first. The India-US bilateral trade is worth $129 billion. Indian exports are at $87 billion, and US exports to India are at $41 billion. So India has a trade surplus with America of around $46 billion. India's main exports include engineering goods, electronic items, gems and jewelry, pharma goods, and information technology. Now, these are the industries at risk. And the impact? Well, that depends on what approach Trump takes. Assume that he looks at how India taxes US imports, then the impact could be limited. Almost 75% of US exports to India attract less than 5% tariffs, so reciprocity will not worry New Delhi. But if Trump looks at the overall tariff rate, then it could be a problem, because India's average tariff rate is 17% and America's average is just 3.3%. So like I said, it's all about waiting and watching. India is trying to avoid a tariff war. That is why Modi has agreed to buy more US weapons and natural gas to reduce the deficit with America. The question is, will that be enough for Trump? Now let's look at Prime Minister Modi's other meetings. After Trump, the biggest one was with Elon Musk, the world's richest man, head of Trump's new Department of Government Efficiency and CEO of a number of companies, most famously Tesla and SpaceX. Prime Minister Modi met Elon Musk at Blair House, also known as the US President's Guest House. It is where foreign leaders usually stay during state visits. So Musk went to Blair House to meet the Indian leader, and he was not alone. With him were his family members, some of his children, including X, the little boy who was seen at the Oval Office with Donald Trump earlier this week. He went to meet Prime Minister Modi as well. And Modi said it was a delight to meet Musk's family. He shared a number of pictures of their interactions. And Musk replied to that, saying that it was an honor for him. Remember, Prime Minister Modi has met Musk before during a previous trip to the US, so this time it seemed to be a more informal sit-down. But that does not mean that they did not discuss business. Look at this picture. Musk's family on one side, a platoon of Indian officials on the other. It seems Prime Minister Modi was intent on getting some business done, and they discussed a range of topics on India-US collaboration in space exploration, artificial intelligence, and sustainable development. There was also talk of working together for innovation, emerging technologies, entrepreneurship, and good governance. Now, we don't know the specifics, but there has been abundant speculation. Does the meeting mean that Tesla will be coming to India, or the satellite internet service Starlink? Will it come to India? Both companies are controlled by Elon Musk. Reports prior to the meeting said that Starlink was definitely on the agenda. They're keen to enter India, but Indian regulations have been in the way. Will this meeting change that? Have they worked out an agreement? We cannot confirm it yet. As for Tesla, it has been discussed multiple times, even during the previous meeting between Modi and Musk, but Tesla still has not come to India, so we'll have to wait and see. Now let's look at the other meetings that the Indian Prime Minister had in Washington, D.C. There was Tulsi Gabbard, the new U.S. Director of National Intelligence, also the first Hindu-American to become a member of the U.S. Congress. She paved the way for others from the community. In her meeting with Prime Minister Modi, she discussed intelligence cooperation to fight against terrorism and other threats. Then there was a meeting with Michael Waltz, Trump's new national security advisor. This conversation focused on defense and civil nuclear energy. You know that India signed a declaration of intent with France this week for modular nuclear reactors. France is going to sell these to India, modular nuclear reactors. Apparently, the US is also in contention because Waltz and Prime Minister Modi discussed it. And then there was a sit-down with Vivek Ramaswamy, the former US presidential hopeful, also former co-head of DOGE, Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. Ramaswamy was supposed to co-chair it, but he stepped down last month. And yesterday he went to meet Prime Minister Modi with his father-in-law. They discussed innovation and culture. Ramaswamy said it was an honor to meet the Indian leader. Now, in a way, all of these meetings stuck to the broad themes of Prime Minister Modi's visit: defense, security, technological innovation, and cooperation. These are the focus areas. The talks are now done. It is now time for action. Actions may speak louder than words, but sometimes gifts get the job done just as well. President Trump welcomed Prime Minister Modi to the White House yesterday with a handshake, a hug, and a gift: a copy of his book, Our Journey Together. Trump signed the book for Modi, inscribing, "Mr. Prime Minister, you're great." That's what Trump wrote. The two leaders flipped through the book, looking at snapshots from their rallies together. What does this gift say about the Modi-Trump bromance? And which other gifts were exchanged during this visit? Here is a report.
It's Valentine's Day, and it seems that the bromance between US President Donald Trump and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi is alive and well. As Trump welcomed Modi to the White House yesterday, the two leaders exchanged handshakes, shared hugs, and of course, a gift. They interacted with the media in the Oval Office, and that's when Trump gifted a copy of his book to Modi. It's titled Our Journey Together. It was published in 2021, the year Trump left office. The book chronicles his first term, and Trump signed the book for Modi, inscribing, "Mr. Prime Minister, you are great." The two leaders flipped through the book together. They went through snapshots from a range of moments, including the Howdy Modi rally, which took place at a football stadium in Houston in 2019, where Prime Minister Modi was cheered on by a crowd of more than 50,000 people. The Namaste Trump rally, which was held a few months later in 2020, marked Trump's first official visit to India. He was greeted by an enormous crowd of more than 150,000 people at the world's largest cricket stadium in Ahmedabad. During the same trip, Trump visited India's monument of love, the Taj Mahal, with First Lady Melania. The book showcased this memory as well. Trump reportedly handpicked every photograph in this book. He wrote the captions as well, and these pictures capture the key moments of his first presidency. From the Mexico border wall project to Trump's impeachment photographs, so no wonder India features in this book, because the two nations shared warm ties during Trump's first term. Speaking of warmth, ahead of the Prime Minister's talks with the President, he also met the head of DOGE, the US Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk. They met at the Blair House to talk innovation, space exploration, and artificial intelligence. Musk gave this special gift to Modi. The specific details are yet to be revealed, but reportedly, the gift is a heat shield tile from his behemoth spacecraft Starship, which took flight last year. The object was engraved with the words Starship Flight Test 5, October 12, 2024. It was a heartfelt gesture. But what do you gift the richest man on earth? Well, you return the gesture to his children. Musk has fathered 12 children. Modi met 3 of them at the Blair House and gifted them classic Indian books, including Rabindranath Tagore's The Crescent Moon, the great R.K. Narayan collection, and Panchatantra by Pandit Vishnu Sharma. Musk's children were quickly engrossed in the books. We saw a similar exchange in France recently. That's where the Prime Minister was for the AI Action Summit, which New Delhi co-chaired with Paris. Modi met US Vice President J.D. Vance and his children. He gifted an eco-friendly wooden alphabet set to Mirabelle Rose Vance, a jigsaw puzzle featuring folk art from West Bengal to her brother Ewan Blaine Vance, and a wooden railway toy set to Vivek Vance. Now, gift-giving is a tricky business. It's an age-old tradition that is constantly evolving. And the Prime Minister's gifts highlighted this: sustainability and cultural consciousness. After all, diplomacy may be about the art of war, but sometimes it's also about the art of gifting.
No one likes being scolded, not at home, not at school, and certainly not at office. So imagine being scolded by the country's Air Force chief, and that too at the biggest air show on the continent. Well, you don't have to imagine, because it actually happened here in India. India's Air Force chief attended Aero India 2025 this week. His name is Air Chief Marshal Amarpreet Singh. While there, he visited the HAL pavilion. Now, HAL is Hindustan Aeronautics Limited. It is a state-run aerospace and defense company. They manufacture India's homegrown aircraft. Listen to what the Air Chief said about them.
At the moment, I am just not confident of HAL, which is very, very wrong thing to happen.
That's a brutal assessment. HAL is India's premier aircraft maker, but the Indian Air Chief has no confidence in them, he says. This is a major strategic concern. It also raises 2 questions. 1, what led to this brutal assessment? And 2, what is HAL doing to correct it? Well, the first answer is quite simple. HAL is delaying deliveries, specifically of the Tejas fighter jet. The Air Force was expecting 4040 Tejas jets by 2016. We are in 2025, not a single jet has been delivered yet. In 2021, they signed another deal with HAL to buy 83 Tejas Mark 1A. This is an advanced version of the Tejas. 11 jets were supposed to be ready by 2024. Again, none have been delivered. The new deadline is around mid-2025. All these delays seem to have frustrated the Indian Air Chief, and you can understand his position. The Indian Air Force is already lacking numbers. We currently operate 31 squadrons. The sanctioned strength is 42. We have only 31. So unless we get Tejas jets, we cannot increase our strength. Nor can we phase out older fighter jets like the MiGs and the Mirages. Plus, India's rivals are making rapid gains. China is expanding its air fleet. They already have 2 homegrown 5th-generation jets. India has none. So you can understand the Air Chief's concern. He wants HAL to pull up its boots. Now let's listen to the other side. What excuse do the executives at HAL have? Let me quote from what their managing director said. India faced sanctions after our nuclear test in 1998, so we had to build things from the ground up. A lot of work has gone into it. The delays are not simply attributable to laziness. The concern of the Air Chief is understandable as his squadron strength is reducing. So HAL is blaming a couple of things. One is the sanctions after 1998. Yes, they did hamper India's ability to import key technology, so all of it had to be made at home, which means delays. Secondly, HAL has also blamed jet engines. Only 4 countries make such engines right now: the US, the UK, France and Russia. HAL bought American engines to power the Tejas. But those engines are yet to be delivered. They've not arrived. Again, this has added to their delay. These may be valid reasons on paper, but the Air Chief is dealing with battleground realities. He needs those fighter jets yesterday. So HAL needs to up its game. And this is not a new problem. Previous Air Chiefs have also criticized them, which makes you wonder, what is the issue here? Experts have pointed out a number of issues, like managerial issues. India's public sector firms have been accused of red tape and slow bureaucracy, and HAL is no different. There have also been reports of poor vendor management, like approvals getting delayed or sometimes getting rejected for no reason. Another problem is lack of private partnerships. Defense firms often partner up with private players. They source certain parts or equipment from outside. Again, HAL apparently does not do enough of this. And this insistence on making everything causes delays. So what is the solution? The Air Force Chief said it best, in fact. HAL must be in mission mode. Like their MD said, laziness is not the factor here, but clearly there are issues. You need to identify and solve those issues, because missed deadlines can be deadly in defense. Now, US President Donald Trump wants to ramp up weapons sales to India, especially the F-35 jets. Trump wants to sell these fighter jets to India. They're made by US defense major Lockheed Martin. The F-35 is a 5th-generation jet, something that India needs, as we just discussed. But now New Delhi is spoiled for choice here, because the Russians have also thrown their hat in the ring. Russia makes the Sukhoi Su-57 jet. It has offered to make it in India for the Indian Air Force. Earlier this week, both jets were showcased at the Bangalore Air Show. And this has never happened before anywhere in the world, the F-35 and the Su-57 at the same event. So New Delhi has a choice to make. The offensive F-35 or the defensive Su-57, which one is better? Who will give us a sweeter deal? And which jet is more suited to India's needs? Our next report tells you.
This picture comes from India's biggest air show that's underway in Bengaluru, the Aero India 2025. It showcases a rare display. At first glance, it may not seem that way. This looks like any other photograph of 2 fighter jets, though it is anything but. That is the Russian Su-57 Felon, parked at the static display area on the tarmac. And zooming past it in the air is the American-made Lockheed Martin F-35 Lightning II. Both are advanced 5th-generation fighter aircraft made by rival countries. They are sharing the same space, which India's Defense Ministry has described as historic, and this moment comes at a crucial time, when India is seeking to bridge its 5th-generation fighter gap. It may not be long before that happens. During his high-profile meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, US President Donald Trump has extended an offer to India to purchase the F-35.
We missed you. I missed you a lot. Starting this year, we'll be increasing military sales to India by many billions of dollars. We're also paving the way to ultimately provide India with the F-35 stealth fighters.
Trump plans to ramp up weapons sales to India this year, and this includes the US-made F-35 jets. If the deal comes through, India would join a small club of nations, including Israel, Japan, and NATO states, which are allowed to buy these aircraft from the US. But Washington is not alone in wanting India to buy its 5th-gen fighter jets. So is Russia. While India is a long-standing customer of the US defense industry, its top supplier has historically been Russia. New Delhi depends on Moscow for nearly 60% of its defense equipment. The war in Ukraine has added doubts about future supplies, but Moscow is looking to boost its defense ties with New Delhi. A few days ago, Russia offered to make its Su-57 in India for the Indian Air Force. So, which of these two 5th-generation fighters is better suited for India? The F-35 is a single-engine stealth multi-role fighter aircraft. The Su-57 is a twin-engine stealth multi-role fighter aircraft. The F-35 has a top speed of Mach 1.6. The Su-57 has a top speed of Mach 2. Both the jets are designed to perform a variety of missions, including air-to-air combat and air-to-ground strikes. The F-35 has a combat range of about 1,500 kilometers, while the Su-57 has a combat range of about 1,900 kilometers. But when it comes to stealth, the F-35 has more advanced capabilities. It's equipped with sophisticated avionics and sensor systems. Simply put, the F-35 has offensive strengths, while the Su-57 is defensive. Now, coming to the cost. The F-35 fighter is one of the most expensive fighter jets in history. Each unit costs between $80 to $110 million. While the Sukhoi, being a Russian jet, is much cheaper. Its estimated cost per unit falls between $35 to $40 million. That's less than half the price of an F-35. But when India chooses which jet to bet on, it'll need to look beyond just the capabilities or the cost. After all, the Su-57s have been produced in smaller numbers. They haven't actively participated in combat operations. Meanwhile, the F-35 is part of many air forces. More than 1,000 aircraft are in active service. The jet is combat-proven. Plus, India is also focusing on developing its own 5th-generation fighter, the AMCA, the Advanced Medium Combat Aircraft, a single-seat, twin-engine 5th-generation stealth multi-role combat aircraft, which has become a focus amid Prime Minister Modi's mission to boost domestic defense production in the country. So, as things stand, India is in a good position to evaluate all the aspects, strike a hard bargain, and let its 5th-generation fighter jet dreams take flight.
The world is scrambling to make sense of the new reality. America engaging with Russia. Donald Trump had a call with Vladimir Putin on Wednesday to talk about ending the war in Ukraine. Now, this is just the first step. A deal still needs to be hammered out, and yet it offers a glimmer of hope for an end to all the bloodshed. That being said, what kind of deal are we looking at? Will Putin accept? What will he accept, and what is he willing to give up? Also, where does it leave the other party in this war? Ukraine. We ask because Trump called Putin directly. Only after that did he inform Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky. It left Zelensky blindsided, but he seems to have processed the information now, and this is what he said.
It's important that everything does not go according to Putin's plan, in which he wants to do everything to make his negotiations bilateral between him and the United States of America. We, as a sovereign country, simply will not be able to accept any agreements without us.
Zelensky said he won't accept a deal in which Ukraine has no say. It is, after all, a sovereign nation, so it won't just take whatever it is given. Look at the American response to that.
Will Ukraine have a seat at that table for those negotiations?
Of course they would. I mean, they're part of it. We would have Ukraine, we would have Russia, and we'll have other people involved too.
And this is what Russia had to say.
One way or another, Ukraine, of course, will participate in the negotiations. Of course, there will be the bilateral Russian-American track of this dialogue, too, and the track that will be related to Ukraine's involvement. During the call, Riyadh was mentioned as possible location for the meeting of two presidents. After the call, President Trump said that he sympathizes with the Saudi leadership as the partner state. It is also a common knowledge that Putin has very good relations with the Crown Prince.
Moscow says Ukraine will be involved in one way or another, but the priority is bilateral discussions with the US, because for Russia, Ukraine hardly matters in the grand scheme of things. It is Trump who will have the final say on the war and on the day after. You see, Russia is looking at the aftermath too. It wants the diplomatic isolation to end. It wants to be back on the global stage. For the last 3 years, Europe and the US tried to cut Moscow off. But Trump wants to take a different approach. He said Russia should be welcomed back to the G7. The G7, as you know, is a group of 7 advanced economies. Until 2014, it was the G8, the group of 8. Russia was the 8th member. But it was expelled 9 years back because it had invaded Ukraine and taken over the Crimean Peninsula. This happened in 2014, and since then the G8 has been the G7. But now Trump wants Russia back in the club.
Do you want to have Russia back to the G7, sir?
I'd love to have them back. I think it was a mistake to throw them out. Look, it's not a question of liking Russia or not liking Russia. It was the G8. And you know, I said, what are you doing? You guys, all you talk about is Russia, and they should be sitting at the table. I think Putin would love to be back.
Clearly, Trump wants to normalize relations with Moscow, and Putin would like it too, although Russia says it is not interested in the G7, but it's hard to imagine they would refuse to rejoin if asked. We will get more clarity after a meeting between Putin and Trump. They are said to be planning one.
During the call, Riyadh was mentioned as possible location for the meeting of two presidents. After the call, President Trump said that he sympathizes with the Saudi leadership as the partner state. It is also a common knowledge that Putin has very good relations with the Crown Prince.
We told you about this yesterday. Trump and Putin may meet in Saudi Arabia. It is seen as a neutral venue. And Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman shares good ties with both leaders. But now Saudi Arabia might have competition because China wants to join the party. China wants to play peacemaker and host Trump and Putin. But look at the equations here. For Russia, China is a no-limits partner. For the US, China is a trade and tech adversary. So obviously, the Americans won't agree to China as the meeting venue. The White House has said that the offer from Beijing is quote-unquote not viable at all. Good point. We'll tell you what else is not viable. Excluding Ukraine from the peace talks and excluding Europe. How will the US convince the Europeans to butt out? How will it convince Zelensky to accept Putin's offer? There's a lot that does not look viable at the moment, although it may start becoming clearer in the coming days. Zelensky is set to meet the US Vice President tonight. J.D. Vance is in Germany for the annual Munich Security Conference. Zelensky is there too. They were scheduled to meet earlier today, but the talks got postponed. US officials asked for some time. They say that they're reviewing the new deal that Zelensky has signed. This is the deal Zelensky has signed, giving the US access to Ukraine's rare earth minerals. Zelensky, of course, signed it in the hope of getting continued US support. Let's see how the US reacts to this. J.D. Vance will meet Zelensky once the deal is reviewed and probably explain Ukraine's new reality. We will be keeping a track of all the developments here. Now let's look at another bombshell that Trump dropped. Though perhaps the choice of the word is incorrect, because Trump spoke about doing the exact opposite. He wants to reduce the number of bombs, nuclear bombs. In the US, Russia and China, Trump is talking about denuclearization. It is a welcome step. We already have too many nukes in the world, way more than anyone needs. So reducing the stockpile does make sense. But will Russia and China go along with this? Probably not. China has already given a reply. It has told Trump, "You first." Here's our report.
US President Donald Trump made an announcement yesterday. he spoke about nuclear weapons. Trump says there are too many in the world, so he wants to reduce the number of nukes. Trump doesn't plan to do this alone, of course. He wants the other two biggest nuclear powers to join him.
I'm going to have that conference primarily with China and Russia because those are the two that really are out there. And we're going to have them spend a lot less money, and we're going to spend a lot less money. And I know they're going to do it. They agreed to it. We were talking about denuking, denuking, and President Putin and I agreed that we were going to do it in a very big way. There's no reason for us to be building brand new nuclear weapons. We already have so many you could destroy the world 50 times over, 100 times over.
Let's look at the numbers. The US is currently estimated to have 5,225 nuclear weapons. Russia reportedly has 5,580. Together, they control about 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. Far below them, but in third place, we have China, which is thought to have about 600 nukes. These are the latest estimates from this January. Now, let's understand what these numbers mean. Nuclear bombs have only been used once during a war. That was World War II, in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The US bombed the Japanese cities. It killed about 140,000 people in Hiroshima and 74,000 in Nagasaki. This includes people who died after the blasts due to radiation poisoning. And remember, these were the first nuclear bombs to be developed. They were tiny compared to what came later. One of the most infamous giant nukes was the Russian Tsar bomber. It was first tested in 1961. This bomb was reportedly over 1,500 times more powerful than the Hiroshima and Nagasaki bombs combined. And the Tsar bomber was developed in the 1950s and 60s. A handful of these would be enough to obliterate the US or any other part of the world. So then what was the point of building so many nukes after that? This is true for both Russia and the US. The old nuclear race was just an ego battle. It seems the older generation just wanted to prove they could do it. And now, people today are stuck footing the maintenance bill. So Trump is correct. There's really no reason for the US and Russia to build new nukes. They have plenty of old, deadly ones that can do the job just fine. And as for China, 600 nukes is also too much. But apparently not for Beijing. Reports say it wants to hit 1,000 nukes by 2030. Again, why? Maybe keep an extra 100 as backups in case of malfunctions. But why the need to hit quadruple digits when even a single nuke works as a deterrent against potential enemies? Not to mention, a massive stockpile is a drain on a country's finances.
At some point, when things settle down, I'm going to meet with China, and I'm going to meet with Russia, in particular, those two, and I'm going to say there's no reason for us to be spending almost $1 trillion on military. There's no reason for you to be spending $400 billion. China's going to be at 400 billion. We're at $1 trillion. We're going to be at close to $1 trillion. And I'm going to say we can settle this on, we can spend this on other things. We're all spending a lot of money that we could be spending on other things that are actually, hopefully, much more productive.
India, the UK and France seem to have the right idea. Build enough nukes to secure yourself and then spend money on other things. Trump is proposing this to Russia and China. Trump says that Russian President Vladimir Putin is on board. That could mean that they will extend the US-Russia New START treaty, which places limits on nuclear stockpiles. But will Beijing agree to nuke limits?
As the nations with the largest nuclear arsenals, the US and Russia should earnestly fulfill their special and primary obligations of nuclear disarmament by further making drastic and substantive cuts to their nuclear arsenals, so as to create the necessary conditions for other nuclear-armed countries to join the nuclear disarmament.
The Chinese spokesperson basically said, not until the US and Russia denuclearize first. If China doesn't join Trump from day one, it could undermine the whole plan, and we'll stay where we are today. in a world with too many nukes for no good reason.
Our next story also involves Russia, but this time the theatre is different. It is not about Ukraine or the US. Moscow has other fish to fry too. It has set its sights on the African nation of Sudan. Russia has worked out an agreement to set up a naval base in Sudan on the coast of the Red Sea. This would be Russia's first naval base in Africa. Let's turn to the map. This is Sudan. As you can see, it has a coast along the Red Sea. This is where Russia plans to set up a naval base, and yesterday Sudan gave it the go-ahead. This is a long delayed step. Sudan and Russia initially talked about this back in 2019. This was under Sudan's former president, Omar al-Bashir. But Bashir was overthrown that very year in 2019. A military coup took place and he was deposed. The new military junta that came in signed a deal with Russia. They wanted to go ahead with a naval base, but then there was a shake-up. In 2021, Sudan's current junta leader took over. His name is Abdel Fattah al-Burhan. Burhan halted Russia's plans. He said the deal would have to be reviewed. So Russia had to wait, and then things went awry. You may know that there's a civil war going on in Sudan. It began in 2023 and it left Russia split. Moscow primarily exerts its influence in Africa through mercenary groups like the infamous Wagner group. It was active in Sudan during the civil war. And Wagner chose to back one side, the RSF paramilitary group. But the Kremlin backed the other side. It was supporting Burhan and the Sudanese army. As I said, Russia was split. But it seems that Moscow's decision to play both sides worked out in the end. The Sudanese military has been making gains recently. It has been capturing territory from the RSF, and it's reportedly marching to Sudan's capital to take it back. And the army is grateful for Russia's support in all of this, and it seems that Moscow backed the right horse here. They reward the new naval base. The Sudan-based deal comes at a good time for Russia. Its main naval base in West Asia is in a tricky position, the Tartus naval base in Syria. Russia backed a losing horse in Syria, remember? The ousted president Bashar al-Assad. Syria's new rebel rulers are not too happy with Moscow, so the Tartus base's future is in doubt. But with the Sudan deal in place, Russia will be able to relocate. It can move its ships to the Red Sea, still close enough to exert influence in West Asia. And they will also get additional influence in Africa to boot. So not a bad trade at all. The Red Sea is already full of foreign bases. The US, China, the UK, France, Germany, Italy, all of them have bases nearby in the country of Djibouti. So Russia is moving to a very crowded area. But this could work in Moscow's favor. It could allow them to keep a close eye on their rivals. Again, it's a potential win. But let's see if that actually happens, because as I said, the Sudan civil war is still very much on. Even though Burhan's junta has the upper hand right now, who knows what tomorrow will bring. Our last story tonight is about the city destroyer. This is what the internet is calling an asteroid, which is on a collision course with the Earth. If it hits us, the asteroid will cause an explosion with 500 times the power of the atomic bomb that was dropped on Hiroshima. Now, before you panic, it will pass very close to the Earth in 2032. That's 7 years away, and its chances of actually hitting us are very low, just about 2%. But China is already in apocalypse mode. It is building what they call a planetary defense force. Our next report tells you more.
When the solar system was formed about 4.6 billion years ago, there were some leftovers, or what we call today asteroids. These are space rocks, and they are considerably smaller than planets, and they orbit the Sun. This is where millions of them live, between Mars and Jupiter in the so-called main asteroid belt. But sometimes they are pushed out of the belt, and when this happens, they could end up anywhere, even on a collision course with Earth. Like the city destroyer. That's what the internet is calling it. Its actual name is asteroid 2024 YR4. It's anywhere between 40 to 100 meters wide. Scientists say that in December 2032, it will pass very close to Earth and it might even strike the planet. If that happens, it will cause an explosion that would be equivalent to nearly 8 million tons of TNT. To put that in context, that's 500 times the power of the atomic bomb that dropped in Hiroshima. Hence the name City Destroyer. So why aren't we freaking out a little more and ramping up missions to Mars? Because the scientists aren't too worried. They say that there's only a 2% chance that the asteroid will hit Earth, meaning there's a 98% chance that it will not. The asteroid will most likely pass our planet, but China is not so sure. It's already preparing for an apocalypse. It's building a planetary defense force to monitor near-Earth asteroids and issue warnings, and it has already started recruiting. Job ads have been posted by China's State Administration of Science, Technology and Industry for National Defense. This is a government agency that works on aerospace technology, and it's seeking young, loyal graduates with a background in aerospace engineering, international cooperation and asteroid detection, and a firm political stance supporting the Chinese Communist Party. Yes, because that's the quality you need to stop asteroid collisions. Just chant your leader's name and all will be well. Sounds a little cultish, especially as the recruitment drive comes amid soaring unemployment rates. But Beijing is not alone in preparing for the worst-case scenario with the City Destroyer. Last week, analysts increased their probability assessment of it hitting the Earth from 1.3% to 2.2%. Now, the 2024 YR4 asteroid is at the top of the European and US space agencies' risk lists. The UN's Space Mission Planning Advisory Group has been meeting regularly to discuss a response. But no one is panicking about it because the asteroid is still 7 years away and there's only a tiny chance of it hitting the Earth.
And now it's time for Vantage Shots, images that tell the story. In Chile, a humpback whale swallows a kayaker whole before spitting him out. In the US, a train collides with an SUV. In Taiwan, gas blast at a mall kills at least 4 people and injures 26. And finally, we're taking you back in history. On this day in 2005, YouTube was launched. This is an online video platform, and today it has more than 2.5 billion monthly active users who watch around 5 billion YouTube videos every day. We're leaving you on this note. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next week.